Welcome to the Lift Oneself podcast. I am your host, Nat B. Listening with an open heart allows us to relate to another's journey, opening up our minds to insights that help us reflect on our own life. In every story, you can find a glimpse of yourself in the details. I appreciate you being here. Welcome to the Lift Oneself podcast, Arayeh. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
How is your heart doing?
My heart is actually doing wonderfully. I love that question because I go run every other day beside the ocean. And today was like, I'm in heaven. Every other day is like that. But today it was just so intentional because I always have these beautiful, joyful episodes in my meditation, my run and all those things. But I really decided today, once again, it's a moment-to-moment decision, right? That I need to cultivate this feeling, this joyful feeling throughout the day. So it's not just when you're meditating, it's just throughout the day, like have reminders. So I'm doing really good right now.
Pretty high on life.
I am absolutely high. Like when I go to my destination, I have a little bit of rumination, a little bit of overthinking, but then I get to the beach and I take off my socks and I just do some Native American rituals, some chanting, some Kundalini yoga. And so I feel really, really high. And then when I come back, I cannot stop smiling, like big open smile. Everyone's looking at me. It's like they think I'm listening to something. I'm no. And sometimes I'm high on life. I'm sorry, I can't stop smiling.
It's a beautiful state to be in. And we forget that we can access that all the time. And sometimes we feel kind of guilty that you want to deserve. And it's like, yeah, I can. It's a choice that I can make to access this. And it doesn't have to depend on my circumstances or my environment.
Yes. So I have to mention this. I have been teaching these things for the past 7 years. My book is going to be called The Art of Living in Joy, right? So I know everything in my head, right? I've studied it. I'm very scientific. I've experienced it. But as I said, it was merely in meditation or when I was talking to my clients and, when I was accessing this information intellectually. And then I think it was more than a year ago in COVID time, I got scammed for a big amount of money. And you know that, right? So because I put it on Facebook for awareness. And then I think I kept asking myself, because I never, ever, ever feel a victim to any circumstance. That's my teaching, right? But I always ask, why did I call for this experience? What's the lesson? And after a month, I got this lesson and I felt it in my core that I have to be very joyful and grateful for what I have right now. And I know like building a business is really hard and you're always busy, content creation, going out, like there's so many sides of marketing, which we usually don't like. We people who want to just, do the work. And I was not feeling high on life all the time. And I think that was the lesson telling me that I really have to do this. And after that, it got ingrained in me that this is the key to have that joy within first, and then abundance will follow. So to me now, I know joy equals abundance, really. It's abundance, it's love. All of them are synonymous.
The way that you were so open and revealing that experience onto Facebook was so empowering to so many. And it also helped you, I'm sure, to lean into the fear, to no longer, because a lot of times when events happen to us, we've been kind of programmed, well, don't share it with anybody because you don't want the rejections, the judgments, or whatever narrative there is. Yet you chose to empower yourself by sharing it and leaning into the fear. And I know we exchange messages privately in there. Can you explain a little bit of what that process was about the emotional triggers, what happened? Because I remember you speaking when I shared, like, be aware there's fear that got activated. And you were like, yeah, I thought it was gone, but it's in a cellular aspect and there's something in here. So can you explain a little bit how that was and how you had to show up for yourself in that experience?
Sure, sure. So first of all, the only reason I put that post was for awareness. So I really felt obligated to, because I'm not like, I got so many scam calls, right? We get it all the time. But this one was like, they were so smart. There were like 4 people. They were like really intelligent people that I feel so sad that these intelligent people are using their expertise and talents for these you know, scams. But that was the only reason that I put it out. But the reward that I got, and that support and that feeling of, you know, I'm doing something for other people, and everyone was so beautifully supportive, and they put their heart out for me. I got so many calls, like probably 40 like calls and texts, and that was so rewarding, and it really helped me heal a little bit, because it was as you said, it was so traumatic. I was with the phone with them on the phone with them for 10 straight hours. They wouldn't let me hang up the phone, so I could call my dad or my husband to just investigate, you know. I was on the phone with them. I was driving, like the engine of my car just got shut down for a couple of times, where I went to these little stores, not little, like Safe and other big stores, to get those gift cards, to give them their phone number, their number. But other than that, I was driving for 10 hours. So it was really ingrained in my cells. And that's when I couldn't do anything for 2 months. I couldn't open my computer, because the day after, I got also a scam email. I thought it was related. And so it was really traumatic. I was traumatized. So, and the lesson that I learned, that really helped me helping clients much more, is that trauma takes time, because it took like 2 months for me to get back to the computer. I really didn't even want to look at my computer. I didn't want to work. I shut down everything. I really couldn't. And when you asked me that question, I honored that. I didn't feel like I have to push, because I was really traumatized. And then I think after 3 weeks or so, like, I don't even have a TV. I never had a TV for 8 years. I don't watch anything. And, you know, my enjoyment is like meditation and, you know, reading. And I'm very purposeful. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't watch TV so much. I really, I'm very intentional about my day. But I allowed myself for 1 week to just watch Netflix and just watch like funny movies, just funny, like nothing heavy, all day long. Like, I watched like 10 movies a day for 1 week. And my husband was so gracious to understand that. And I want to tell you, for the first 3-4 days, I was feeling so guilty. I'm like, what am I doing? This is really, you know, it's not helpful. It's not useful. It's not purposeful. And after 4 or 5 days, I leaned into it, as you said, and I allowed myself, and I allowed to really enjoy the movies and just be okay with just taking time and take a rest. And that really was another part of the healing. So it was kind of sectioned throughout the 2 months. And then little by little, I got back. And I think it was, when I got back, probably it was 4 or 5 months to get back fully to what I was doing. But I honored myself to have that, that time.
I really appreciate that you questioned the narrative of it had to be a certain way, and you engaged in a different way. You really listened to what you needed in that moment. And it was a bit of requiring a distraction. It was requiring, because it was too intense inside there. When the nervous system is really dysregulated, you can understand why some people commit suicide or whatnot, because the turmoil that's going on inside, it's overloading. Oh my gosh. I thank you for being transparent, because at times people put professionals that have certain professions on a pedestal, and they forget we're human too. And we have to go through experiences, and to actually apply the tools. When we do have our own personal experiences, we can be such a much better benefit, because then we have a better understanding to relate.
Yes, I think that was part of the reason I got that, because I really needed to see what trauma, how, what, because all of us have had difficult childhood, but I never had like traumatic experiences. And this was really traumatic. Like I was literally scared, like I would pull down the curtains. What if they live here? I was really scared because, as I said, they were intelligent. When they called, like maybe I should probably bring up what it was so people would understand. Like this person called, he gave a legitimate name from a police station in Monterey. Like I googled, he was legitimate. The phone numbers were legitimate. The police, the marshal, the U.S. Marshal office, they were all legitimate phone numbers. So they spoofed these phone numbers. They're so tech savvy, right? And then I would even, so it was, and then he said, you were served a subpoena to appear in court. You signed, you didn't come, and so that's against the law. You have to come, and I'm like, I didn't sign anything. And so, it's okay. You can come and verify your signature at the police station in Monterey. And I'm like, okay, I'm coming. And he said, if you come, we're gonna arrest you. You have to put bail. So it made total sense in my, to my little brain. I'm not, I don't know legal. Like he would just throw these legal terms. For example, my husband was there and I was trying to talk to him and put on mute, and he was yelling at me. Like they put me on fear right away. Like I was on fight or flight. I couldn't, like my smart brain was shut down. And my husband's too. He couldn't also. And as soon as I told him, I was like, I was mute and I was talking to my husband. He said, "This is there's a gag order on this. Go Google gag order. You cannot talk about this case to anyone." And I Googled gag order and said, you shouldn't reveal anything about any case to anyone. I'm like, oh my God. So he was throwing all these legal terms, and so. I was completely on fight or flight. So these scammers usually use two things to catch you: one, greed, and one, fear. So and to me it was fear. And so as I told you, when I kept asking what were the lessons, the first lesson was that, like, I shouldn't panic, because this is my flaw, quote unquote flaw. I panic. That's why I'm reactive. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I was an engineer until 7 years ago. I was a computer engineer. And because I get reactive with my kids and I panic in the face of something not being perfect, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I followed Dr. Shefali and got my coaching certificate. I got my PhD in psychology because I wanted to figure this reactivity out. And this was like this hardcore lesson. Like, I shouldn't panic. There's no emergency out there, unless of course there is. If your child jumps into the street, go grab him. But everything else, there's no emergency. And my brain, and most of us, we feel everything is an emergency. If someone flips us in the street, while driving, we think it's an emergency. We panic. But really, there's no emergency out there, very little emergency. So that was one of the first lessons that I got. And I got panicky and I just lost it. Yeah.
It's beautiful that when we understand the teachings and when we really apply it, the universe is always serving us. The experiences may be very sucky, yet they're, like I say, without the manure, the flowers cannot be bright. Without the muck, the lotus cannot bloom. Yet we don't want the muck, but we want the beauty and the wisdom and the intellect. And it's like, well, you got to have the muck too. And it's like, no, I don't want that. Or just like any woman that has had labor pains, we're like, something great is going to come out of this pain. Like, my body is being torn apart. Yet we realize, growth requires some depths of pain for us to really, it's not an intellectual, which the world will want you to think academically. It's in our direct experience of feeling things, of interpreting things, of expanding and seeing it from different dimensions, not just a very narrow example. And then we could become aware of the way we can judge. We become aware of the way we have our biases and the way that we treat ourselves with what the fear is. when we don't have a relationship to understand and question it. So I thank you for that openness and explaining, the inner experience of what the fight or flight can be like. And I'm sure it gave you a better perspective with your parenting with your children also, with recognizing, like, if I have a fully developed brain and this happened to me with all the experiences, these little nervous systems that haven't even experienced, and we're bombarding them with so many things, it's like, oh my gosh, I get it now. I see it in such a different perspective.
Yes, exactly. So at that time, as you were saying, so when we are in fight or flight, then we cannot access your intuition, your heart wisdom, because I'm very intuitive. But like that panic didn't even allow me to pause and to connect. And actually, my son, who was 10 at that time, he was around me. They were actually all hearing what he was saying. And he knew in his heart that this person is a scammer. And he says, Mom, I told you. So he was in touch with his heart because he wasn't panicking. He was just, relaxed, and he was connecting to his wisdom. But I couldn't. And that's why I was like, wow, because I'm very intuitive. I trust my intuition all the time, but not when I'm on fight or flight. That showed me how, like, I got out of this groundedness, that knowingness that we all have.
We weren't taught how to lean into the fear. A lot of times in spirituality or religion, you're hearing, don't fear is this, fear is that. Yet our nervous system is made out of fear, and it has one default: don't die. Yes. And we're not taught that, losing a job, your child being sick, having pain, these are all signals of a threat of death. Even though it may not be the physical, yet our psychological is a big part of grieving and feeling a threat of loss. And so the nervous system is always default, like, don't die, don't lose out on something. And so that energy, we haven't been taught to lean into that. Like, the meditation is in order to be with that fear, to understand what information it needs to give you, and then to tame that big dragon that it can get to when it's not listened to.
Yes.
And to what I see in my own experience of when I had my illness with the lesions in my brainstem, it's really seeing our life force is housed in the nervous system. And unless we know how to get through the force fields, we're not able to connect into our intuitive heart, to connect into divinity, God, Allah, whatever word you use for that higher power that's interconnected with everything, you're not able to access that. And so you have to know about the nervous system and the fight or flight to go through that force field, that it's always protecting that life force.
Yes.
And understanding what the feelings are and questioning them. And the thing is acknowledging. It's the simple acknowledging doesn't mean it's agreeance. It doesn't mean that you're saying that it's okay. It's, let's just acknowledge what's here.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm pausing because, as you said, our primitive brain main job is to keep us safe. So it's constantly monitoring our surrounding to find threats, right? To keep us safe. And in my opinion, an awakened life, an enlightened life is when we kind of become aware of this mechanism, which is a very human mechanism, right? Because we are not just this human. We have this awareness, the spirit, whatever you want to call it. We have to tap into that too. So we become aware, say, okay, this is a function of the brain, and I'm going to become very vigilant, and I'm going to monitor the threats that the brain thinks they're all out there, because most of them are not, right? If I always ask my clients, I want you to write things that are going right at this moment. There are probably billions of things that are going right. But if like one thing that is going quote unquote wrong, because there's no wrong, there's always, like, even the scam was for my higher purpose. I needed it. Yeah. Right. After 2 months, I woke up in the middle of the night, and literally from the bottom of my heart, I thanked these 4 guys. I said, it felt like I paid $14,000 to a coaching company to teach me this in my bones. So, but our brain is thinking everything, like that one little thing that is not going right is, let's focus on that. So we have to be super intentional and really intentionally focus on the things that we have, at the power of our thoughts, how we create our life. As you said, we are manifesting our life all the time, but guess what? We're manifesting unconsciously and mostly from our fears that are deep rooted within us. Now let's become intentional and now manifest positively. Like, what do I want really? I don't, when I have fear, it means I'm manifesting fear, right? When, like, right before the scam, I was literally in scarcity. I wasn't in scarcity. Oh, I was creating my courses and like, when is the next one? Like, I wanted to have this steady client base. Like, you're building a business, right? It's really hard, and you had to do a lot of money mindset work, right? And I was completely in scarcity. What did I attract? Scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
I attracted lack. So that's what these are the lessons that I truly learned. And it all starts within, and really monitoring this primitive brain, and literally use our higher brain, which is actually the back of our forehead, and the wisdom in our heart, these two. But it requires us to be super vigilant on a moment-to-moment basis, like really monitor, scan. I always suggest to have hourly reminders to check in with yourself. Where are you? Where are you vibrating? Are you vibrating on fear and lack and jealousy and comparison? And, or are you vibrating on joy and peace and you're elated on life? And then pull yourself up, because it's the power of the thought, really. Like, I had a client, she passed away a couple of months ago. She had a stage 4 cancer in her brain. I had never seen a person happier than her, more joyful, not happier, but more joyful than her. She told me many times that, cancer was the best thing that happened to her. What's worse than terminal cancer? She had a 4-year-old little girl. She was very young.
Mm-hmm.
But even cancer doesn't have a say in our mood, in our state.
Yeah. I think also too, when there's illnesses, you connect into, because I see death in a totally different way. And I understand that there is no control over it. And we've been fed a kind of fairy tale story that it goes by a certain age group or a certain lifestyle or certain actions, where it's like, no, you don't have the control over it. And it's understanding you have to show up with yourself and be the best of what there has to be. And also hold the fear that you really don't know when you're going to die. And when you come into letting go of that, you understand everything is safe in its way. And I can thank my trauma now of my childhood trauma, because I understand it gave me experiences and resilience that a lot of people are like, we have no idea what you're talking about. Like, what are you? And it's like, at the time, it was not something I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Yet I do see in a bigger thing that certain experiences are needed to really have the language and actually the feeling and frequency to communicate with other people, and to really see that this is a spectrum. Because for me, in my experience, it's like death is a transition of something. Because I'm like, as intelligent as we look at the body and all these things that are communicating, to think that life is in that short expectancy, it's like,
Doesn't make sense.
no, it really doesn't. And for me, like, what I've been tapping into is really seeing our nervous systems are not our own nervous systems. They're our ancestors that are downloading and downloading. And unless we take a pause and sit with all of those kind of big things that sometimes we're like, what is this stuff? Like, this wasn't in my experience. Yet when we allow space for it, we're ushering in what truth needs to be. We're ushering in what the evolution, what the innovation needs to be here. We're ushering in to listen, to be connected, when we're seeing how disconnected we're becoming. Like, diversity is becoming something that's supposed to be a taboo. And it's like, if you look at nature, we need to be diverse. Mm-hmm. If we're all cookie cutter, being the same, all this, like, all of us will die. We need the diversity, and we need to understand that we can join with each other. and connect with each other. We're connected in a bigger force. And I can recall how I would, 7 years ago when I was told I was going to die and not having a diagnosis, how it freaked people out of like, how can you be so calm? You have young kids that are 4 years old and and I'm like, because I understand it's bigger than me and I can only do what I can do with right now.
Exactly.
And the fear still comes back to me because, time is an illusion. And I'm like, 7 years has passed, yet it's a moment. And I'll see where I'll project my fear and get caught up with the world because, there's real things that happen in the world and we want to be able to prepare our children in the best way. Yet for me, it's like, are you allowing them to listen to their intuition? Are you allowing them to develop what is needed for them? Because the way I knew the world isn't here anymore. Technology has changed things dramatically, even just in a decade, even just the last 5 years has changed. So it's like what you knew to be true is no longer here. So allow it to be served in a much bigger way. Yet I understand, where it freaks people out because they haven't come out of that control narrative.
Yes, control is an illusion. Really, there is no control. This ceiling could come to my head and I could die at this time. We don't have any control. Really. And you mentioned something really beautiful where I think there was this experiment where they made a mouse get scared from an apple, for example. I don't remember exactly. Like they showed an apple, they made a really huge noise and the rat got scared, right? And then after that, the fear of apple, then she got pregnant later. She wasn't pregnant at that time. She got pregnant later, and the mouse, whichever mouse or rat, I don't remember, the baby mouse had the fear of apple. So these things get actually transitioned. All these fears and traumas get transitioned through genes. But what can we do about it? As you said, the way we dry off the karma seeds. So these are all karmas, right? Cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, right? The best way the most effective, the only way to dry off karma seeds is to pull ourselves to this moment. And as you said, even if it's pain, acknowledge it and not judge it and let it dissolve, because the pain comes back if you don't pay attention to it. We have to pay attention to it and name it to tame it, right? We feel it to heal it. So it will dissolve. And the more we do this, then we are actually cutting off all these generational pain, all these generational patterns. So just by pulling ourselves to this moment, not judging it, not getting entangled with it, and just really encounter every moment as a fresh new moment. Just literally, I always say, close the file cabinet to all these memories. Just literally pause for 5 seconds. What can I do? Connect. Just put the fight or flight back and connect. Ask and it is given. What can I do at this time to elevate the consciousness of my child and myself, the world, or any other thing with my husband, with my boss, doesn't matter. Just pausing and pulling ourselves in this moment and just reinvent ourselves, not regurgitate, not repeat what we did the day before. Because we literally repeat our thoughts and things, 80-90% of the things that we do the day before. And this is when I call, like Deepak Chopra said, like we're biological robots, right? So by pulling ourselves anchoring ourselves to this moment and ask ourselves what to do, let me do something fresh, something new. This is how we dry off the karma seeds, and we are reinventing ourselves. We are not robots anymore.
I'm going to ask you a reflective question.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you to take your awareness right now and connect back to your 18-year-old self.
Mm-hmm.
And you have 3 words you can tell your 18-year-old self. It could either be in a form of a kind of phrase or just 3 independent words. What would they be?
I've been asked this question so much, but literally, I don't think I couldn't give any advice, because at that time she wouldn't get it. Like, she was not in a place to get this advice. The only thing I would tell her, I would say, I love you.
Those are 3 words.
Because that's what's missing in all of us. We didn't feel loved and seen and soothed and secure the way we deserved as children. So that's what's missing, self-love. So I would really show her that she's loved, and I love her and she's enough. So that would be the only thing, because any other advice, I don't think she would. I was a rebel as a teenager.
You mentioned at the beginning that there is a book that you're developing right now. Can you give the listeners a little bit of whetting their palate of what's to come and where they can find it?
Sure. Well, it's not published yet. It's with the editor now. It's called The Art of Living in Joy, and it's kind of a system that I've developed over this past 6-7 years. It's like a 5-step system. PAUSE is an acronym, like PAUSE. It's a 5-step system. Pause. All about pause. We're gonna pause. So where I teach every step. What do we do in the moment when things are triggering me, with our children, with our with life, right? What can we do? So the first step is pause. I didn't listen to myself when I got the scam call, right? The first step is pause. For example, I teach mindfulness and many tools, how to pause and mindful breathing and all those things. And then it goes to A. It's like I teach emotional intelligence, accepting the as is. Then U is understanding thoughts and triggers. This is where we do a little bit of therapy, why we get triggered, how traumas are, coming to this current moment, how we are reliving the trauma. And then S is search for different perspective, which is about, how we are totally different. We see the world so differently. So we talk about that a lot. And when it comes to conscious parenting, what are the unmet needs of the child? Like, let's look at child's perspective, like even our parents or our spouses. Like if someone is yelling, we don't want to fix the yelling, we want to fix why, the root cause of yelling. So that's the different perspective to go deeper, transcend the behavior. And E is eliminate fear and proceed with love, which I talk about boundaries and a little bit of spiritual stuff, how love is the opposite of fear and all those things. So I try to have like a little roadmap in that book. There are tons of exercises, inner child exercises. So I'm very, very thrilled for the book to come out. So send me good vibes so I can actually birth it, because it's my baby. I've developed it. So I teach it in all my classes, conscious parenting classes, the art of living in joy classes. It's like a step-by-step. What can I do? Like, okay, pause. What do I do? Take deep breaths. Now, what do I do? Let's do this. So it's kind of like a roadmap.
Where can people find you?
So my website is drarayeh.com, drarayeh.com. And if anyone is interested, they can make a free 30-minute consultation there and we can chat. And so we'll see if I can be of service to them and to their family. And I'm also on all social media at Dr. Arayeh.
I'll make sure that they're in the show notes for all the information.
Is there
any insights that you would like to leave with the listeners?
Joy is your birthright. We have to believe this. Joy is our birthright, and we are complete and whole and enough. And we don't need it. Like, it all starts from self-love. All love is self-love. We have to really cherish ourselves, soothe our inner children, and do this on a moment-to-moment basis, not just once.
Yeah, it's checking in several times a day, and we forget to do that. We think it's only one time, and it's like, no, it's continuous, because we're being bombarded with different information all the time. And it's really understanding too, when you come in contact with another nervous system, you're having to attune to their frequency while paying attention to your own. And different nervous systems set off different chemistry reactions with everybody. So like that vibe, it's a real thing. Like some people you cannot be around because they send a certain charge in you. And it's not like it's a good or bad thing. It's just being responsible for controlling yourself and what you need to do, and being aware that the only control that you have is with yourself and what your actions are. So if there's something,
in this moment, yes.
Yeah. And setting you off, okay, what do I need to regulate? And sometimes certain instances, we're not able to just leave the setting, yet be responsible of attuning into yourself and pausing, be silent, regulate that inner storm that's going on, and not using the chatter to make it go away. And, like I remind people, especially in my coaching, it's like, we're feeling bodies that think. And we don't use silence. We don't access the silence enough for us to see what's going on inside. Trying to put out the fires outside. And it's like that it will be continuous. Like that will never go out because it's not your responsibility. The only responsibility you have is within yourself, and to be able to listen, like to have understanding for somebody else. It doesn't mean that you're going to fully get it, yet you have to be open to try to understand. And that requires listening. Exactly. So I appreciate you birthing this book. I look forward to it coming out because yes, it's, in the world where they're happy, and it's like happy. No, joy. Like joy. You can be in grief and still have joy too.
Exactly. You can be sad and have joy.
You can be angry and have joy. Yes. Like you can have all this thing of emotions too, labeling positive, negative, high, good, bad. It's like they're information. It's just trying to show you that there's something of a threat. And what I'm also seeing is when you ask people what they need, they don't even know how to answer that.
No, they don't know. They have to reflect. Yeah, they have to take time.
And they don't even understand that sometimes I need a calm space, and that's okay to have that need. But they think it's irrelevant. It's like, no, that's really relevant for you. Like it matters how you're serving yourself so you can show up with other people.
Exactly. We give from the overflow of our energy. Yes.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, Arayeh. I hope you will come back at a later time to when the book is birthed so that
I love talking to you. We can talk for 2-3 hours. Seriously.
I appreciate that. I appreciate, that I give a space where people feel comfortable to talk, feel comfortable to share, feel comfortable to reveal what their truth is so that other people can relate. Because once we relate to another person's story, that opens us up a little bit more to being curious of, oh, well, what's in me that I'm resisting? That I think it's not acceptable. And it's like, oh, if you don't think it's acceptable, then you're not in acceptance and you can't find the abundance.
Exactly.
So I appreciate you being here. Thank you for everything that you do.
Oh, thank you.
I love your energy, and remember to be kind to yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. You too. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay. Bye. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for making it to the end. I appreciate you and your time. If you found any value in this conversation, I ask you to help us grow by subscribing to the Lift Oneself podcast and more, sharing it out to others. The more that we have conversation and dialogue that are honest and open, that is when we can remove the stigmas around mental health. Until next time, remember, be kind and gentle with yourself. You matter.